Nicole. I know you from your little picture on that side. It's funny how you can recognize people in that little Gmail picture.
Froze. You broke it.
Who are you?
Jennifer Lombardi.
Jennifer. We just met.
Yes.
Got your name on telephone. Jackie. There you. Kim. Dan. Grandparents. Yes, sir.
Frank Provenzano.
Sorry, that's
Frank Provenzano.
Frank. Seen your name. You've spoken to me before.
Probably seen me on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I'm Diana.
Diana. Nice to meet you.
Ron Johnston.
Ron Johnston. And handsome at the back there.
Philip Staub.
Who?
Philip Staub.
Heidi.
Samantha Sill.
Okay. And we've met. And where's your daughter?
Oh, she's watching Ice Age 2. I didn't let her watch TV or play on her iPad
She's
the entire
very
day. So she is like pumped. She's so excited.
My wife used to make her kids sit through her contract classes. I'm going to go. Do we have water anyway?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. They advertise this as a contracts class. I am surprised any of you bothered to show up for that. I mean, it's not the most unsexiest title ever.
I'm not sexy, I'm a nerd, so it's perfect.
We're going to talk about whatever comes up. If you're expecting a fill-in-the-blanks contract class, you are in the wrong house, because I can give you a handout to help you with that. What we're going to talk about today is the problems that we've been having lately with the contract. I'm going to, did I just do that?
Yeah, it's broken already.
Good. That's distracting anyway.
It is.
I'm going to introduce you to some new things that no one else in the world knows about, apart from that one lady I talked to down the corridor just now. And we're going to talk about some of the not the real cases, but some of the cases we've had with the names changed to protect the innocent. Thank you so much. It's Tito's. Anybody watch Yellowstone?
Yes.
I'm going to use clips from that for my vacant land class.
I like that.
My wife is watching. She's like power watching. We have to watch one every night. And my goodness, never want to live in Montana or Wyoming. I like the way they just take you across the state line, then kill you. You like it? Yeah, like the police can't get over the line to get you. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Nice. So you promised you'd be here.
I absolutely.
I'm just giving it a few more. I'm just doing the warm up at the moment, trying to get my vocal cords ready, just because I know real tours have a propensity for tardiness. And that's fine. I'm the same. So we're going to talk about a few cases that we've had recently, names changed to protect the innocent. If you recognize yourself in any of my examples, it means that it's not all about you. It's that most people make that mistake as well. Or you've called me something and you think, oh, he's talking about my call. I would never do that to you. Because mostly the questions and the problems and the error are repeated over and over again. Because this is a complex business. We have a lot of moving parts. I deal with one small part of your life. Your life starts with getting yourself set up as a real estate agent, your marketing, your constant pipeline of getting people in. And I'm that one, I cover that one small segment in the middle, which is the transaction. And in your world, that's kind of a small part of it. So, but in my world, it's all my world. So I can sound really smart over 12 pages. Anyone can. And if it's all you're doing is 12 pages, you give me 12 pages of it, even a motor mechanic's manual, I could be clever after 5 years. And I can't even open the hood on my car. I go to the oil change place and the guy says to me, he goes, open the hood. I said, yeah, I'm sure you could. Show me where. And I got out to do it once. He goes, no, the button's under there. So, you know, everyone's got their own little skill, but yours is you've got to have so much knowledge. And as I say, the contract is a very small part of it, or the transaction is a small part of your day, but it's a big part of my day. All the questions pretty much that come in are repeated over and over again. And I try and train people, but we get new agents coming into the business all the time. So it's a constant update. So if I say things that you've heard before loads of time, then, great, because it will stick in. So obviously the big one at the moment I'm going to start with talking about is the whole appraisal gap language. That will be on my headstone. Murray's funeral cost 6,000, but he was willing to bring 3,000 more. I swear to you, we created a rod for our own back because it's unnecessary. It's all it is feel good. It's unnecessary because if we could eliminate it, and I think the market will eliminate it soon, within the next 12 months, the market will shift. We will go back to a kind of balanced market where we won't be too worried. And I think agents there's so few listings, the real listings that are out there, they're on and off within a few days, but there's those old crunchy ones that are out there now, stale ones. They'll have to see some price reduction. As soon as these price reductions come in, then of course the appraisals would be, and I think people are getting more educated now not to overprice their property. It's just no point. So if you go on a listing appointment and say, I want 400,000 for this 300,000 property, then if you're not doing your job if you don't give them realism. And if they say, well, someone might be willing to pay it, say, well, yeah, then maybe cash, lottery winner, basketball player that wants to live next door to his mum. There are people out there that are prepared to throw 100 grand away. But our job is to say, let's be realistic here. There's no point going all the way through a transaction only to have the lender say, no, we're not going to lend. And there's no words that we can put in a contract that can force the lender to lend. And that's what I think we're trying to do by writing this appraisal gap stuff. So, I've put words out there for you guys to use. If the seller really, really wants that to be in the contract. But it's a toothless tiger. It will not really fly anywhere. Because at the end of the day, if the lender won't lend, then you won't get your deal done. The only way to really do it and to make sure the deal closes is to check box 8A on the contract and call it a cash transaction. And then you can go all the way to the closing table. And in the background, the buyer can be getting a loan, but they're risking their escrow and they're risking getting sued if it doesn't work out. So if they're very cash heavy and they're only borrowing a little bit, then there's nothing wrong with hitting 8A and moving forward as if it's a cash transaction. What about the finance is most probably, paragraph 8 is most probably the most complicated and confusing paragraph on the contract. It's also my favorite one, nerd that I am, because it's been an evolution. I've seen that evolve. I think I first started doing this job when it was the FAR 3 contract, maybe even the 2. And the finance has always been a bugbear, and it's just slowly improving to where we are today. So, Genoa, hey, sailing buddies.
Yes.
What's the most complicated part of the new age? What's the most complicated part of the finance paragraph? What's the thing that you just cannot get your head around? Don't be ashamed. We all have this problem. I can't get my head around it. In the experience, I just can't get my head around it. What about the notices? Do you understand what the notices are? Yes, no? Go home.
What's the notice?
Okay, good. That's good. I'm glad you asked that, because the contract itself has in paragraph 8 has 3 required notices, and there's no mention in paragraph 8 of the lender providing a loan approval letter or a denial letter. And that's one of the misconceptions that most agents out there that don't embark on education screw your transaction up because we want a denial letter from the lender or we want an approval letter from the lender. There is no requirement for that. There's just a requirement for 3 notices. And in that paragraph 8B there's the little Roman numerals 3 and little Roman numerals 4. It says if the buyer during the loan approval period gets loan approval, they have to notify the seller in writing. And when they say the buyer, that means the agent as well. So whenever the word buyer or seller comes up, that means the seller's agent, buyer's agent also. So basically the buyer's agent is going to inform the seller's agent in writing that they have loan approval and that they're moving forward. And that loan approval period ends and they move forward. And then the other 2 notices would be, I did not get loan approval, but I'm comfortable that I can get loan approval before this closing date. Therefore, I'm moving forward. That's kind of the old waiver of loan approval, but it says that they're confident in their ability to get the loan. Again, the notice goes to the seller. And then the third one is, I couldn't get loan approval, therefore I'm cancelling. And that's all within the loan approval period. What I'm seeing more and more of now is the agents forget to send that notice. And then the smart agent on the other side shoots you a cancellation on day 31 and you're out of the contract. And you can cry, you can stomp your feet, you throw your teddy bear in the corner. There's nothing we can do. That's perfectly within the seller's right to do that. If you don't send one of those, well, don't send 2 of those notices. Don't care if you're sending the one that's cancelling, but they can cancel on you and throw your escrow back to you. And then they can go to that cash buyer that's sitting out there. It was the city of St. Petersburg many years ago on the Bar 5 that first happened that I knew about. And it was one of our agents. And it was, this baseball players like to live here because they're close to work. And so they were one shortstop and from one team and then the other guy from another team. And the shortstop had bought this $1.7 million place under contract, financed. It was our listing, a Remax, didn't mean to say the brokerage, a brokerage with a balloon. They had the buyer, right? The finance buyer. We had a backup 1.8 basketball player, cash, waiting in the wings. On day 30, this agent had been missing in action since they had gone under contract and inspections. Came to day 30 under the old contracts, pretty similar to the new one. At 2 minutes past midnight, we sent the cancellation, and then at 2 minutes past midnight, we bought the cash offer in and proceeded with the cash offer. On Monday morning, of course, when the broker woke up and their agent's banging on the door saying, hey, they just cancelled on me. They can't cancel on me. Yeah, we can. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of it. So you can imagine how embarrassing that would be to go to your customer who's armed with a baseball bat, we've established, and tell them that, hey, he didn't get his fancy smancy condo, which was within walking distance of work, if he ever walks. I don't even watch baseball, and I'm throwing these baseball things in. It's like cricket in pajamas.
That's a good one.
So you know how important that is then? You will never forget to send those notices.
Yeah.
Or one of those notices. Any questions on that? Yeah.
So I believe we had another situation that had occurred where the buyer did not provide the loan approval to the seller, and the seller exercised their rights within that 3 days following the loan approval date and canceled right at midnight of that, the day after the loan approval. And I think that is one that I get a lot of questions from the new agents on. Can you touch on that? So explaining that 72 hours after the loan approval date.
That was just what we were
That's
talking
the
about.
same thing.
Yeah,
So
it's exactly the same in the 6 as it was in the 5. Yeah, so that seller can cancel on minute after midnight on those 3 days after the loan approval if you haven't sent one of the notices.
Okay.
And we've done it a lot to people from our side, and I've also had it done to our agents as well. And it is a horrible business because the buyers had, in most of the cases, the buyer had loan approval.
Right.
They've been talking, and here's the other thing. we talked about the legal hotline earlier. I'm not even going to talk about the legal hotline, but I just want to say that. I called them on this, and the only reason I called them on it is because sometimes you think to yourself, am I going crazy? Because when the other person is talking loud and fast and they're emphatic about their position, I kind of think, you know what? My wife does that to me all the time. She's not on Zoom, is she? No, she's a sweetheart. This other broker called me and he said, we gave you written loan approval. I said, show me the email. And he said, because that's all we need, an email. I said, I see an email from the lender saying we're good to go. It's all good. I see an email from the listing agent saying we've got a few conditions to close, but I don't see anything that says we have loan approval and we are moving forward, or words to that effect. The lender kind of said, he's all good to go. They have approval. There's a few other things to tie up. So he said, no. He said that the lender said he has loan approval. Notice was given. I said, it says the buyer, meaning the buyer or the buyer's agent's got to give written notice. Doesn't say anything about the lender. And he said, no, there's a case on it. It's a lender on it. There's a case on it. That's a cop out for anyone. Oh yeah, there's a case on it. So I called the legal hotline, and of course they said they did agree with me, thank goodness, that an agent, when you look in the contract, it said buyer means an agent of the buyer also. And what they tried to say was that the mortgage guy was an agent of the buyer. No, he's not. There's no agency relationship between a mortgage guy and, we are under an obligation to have, under real estate law, to provide a due care to our customers, whereas a mortgage broker isn't under real estate law. So that's why he's not an agent of the buyer. So notice from them is meaningless. And make sure it's you that's giving the notice. Crash that one.
We've never done that, so I want to be clear here. So anytime we get mortgage approval on anything that we're doing as the buyer, that we're to send a written notice to the selling agent.
Clearly saying we have loan approval. Yeah. And then
can they ask for a copy of the loan approval?
No, but they can ask, and sometimes just to shut them up, it's okay to give it to them, but there's no requirement to. Yeah,
so
good question.
No matter what we do, we should always send a note.
Always send that note. Doesn't matter if the lender's been talking to them.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And not required to send what the lender sent us.
No, there's no requirement to do that. But because people are whiny out there and they're saying, oh, I want to see loan approval, I want to see what's it called? The denial. The denial's the big one. We don't have to show them a denial. Buyer can just say, I didn't get loan approval. And what is loan approval is the question. Right. Loan approval is when the lender says, today, with everything I know about you and everything I know about the property, I'm prepared to give you a loan. In the old contract, it said commitment. Nobody likes commitment. And the lenders said, we can't commit. So there was never really a true commitment. We can't commit until you're at the closing table and you're about to sign. Yep, you got commitment. Go ahead. That's clear to close. That was commitment. But so we got rid of that word, because they truly can't get that commitment until the last minute. So that's why we've taken that word out of our vocabulary as far as loans go, and we talk about approval. Because, once they've got loan approval, and the lender says, yep, we're good to go, all being well, everything you've told me, you haven't lied to me, as long as you stay with your wife, don't buy a car, stay with your husband, don't buy a car, don't buy a boat, don't do this, don't do that, then we should get to the closing table and be good. So that's why they would never say, we're going to really give you a loan. And they could lose their job, which happens. And there's no protection. Once you've given loan approval, if you cancel the contract because you don't get the loan after that loan approval date, your escrow is at risk as a buyer, except for those two exceptions of seller default and property-related conditions of the loan not met. It's an odd thing. And I think what it's been hard, and we've had this contract since 2020. Yeah, since August or so 2020, and it's still nearly 2 years on. We're still having trouble not so much with our agents, but with some of these mums and pups out there that are still acting on the old let it be known by all men contract. Underneath everything there is dirt. It's what's that, the preamble to the Code of Ethics, isn't it? Underneath everything is land. Hey,
How are you doing?
good.
Sorry, I'm late.
No problem. You're never late in real estate. You're just early for the next class.
There you go.
Anything else on the financing before I go on to my next troublesome part? I hate these things. I've got to work out how to stop it from telling me I've got texts and calls. Take it off. But then I want to get my steps in.
I think you could put it in an airplane.
Silent, yeah.
Just swipe up and hit the.
I never put things in airplane mode. Don't fly with me. If I'm flying on something that relies on my watch being switched off, I don't want to be in that thing. That is such a crock. I have friends that are pilots that tell me it would be a freak of nature. You'd have to be up in the cockpit, holding your phone against, hitting the instruments with your phone for it to work. They're not real pilots, but work at a pilot gas station. Give me some more questions.
So Murray, I called
thank you.
yesterday. Yeah, I called you yesterday on this where I had a cash deal. I'm representing the seller, and then all of a sudden they want an appraisal, right?
Yeah.
So it made my seller very nervous, thinking they're going to back out. Are they having second thoughts? And I asked the agent, well, why are you getting an appraisal? And now she's saying, well, they're getting a mortgage. Well, it's a cash deal. So my question to you, which I think this is important because this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Lot, right?
And I think it doesn't matter how you get the cash. I think it's disingenuous not to have the conversation. It's not, there's no legal reason to, but it'd be nice to say to the listing agent, you know what, we're not going to come up with all this fancy appraisal gap language. What we're going to do, we're just going to take out all the protection. We're going to check box A and go as cash, but we are going to be getting a mortgage. So, but we're very confident that we're going to get a mortgage, and you can make the seller rest assured that come closing, the packet will be at the table. They're going to see it anyway. They've got to get their lenders got to have involvement with the title company. So,
but so I thought that was one of the whole reasons they changed 8A to being that simple one line of being cash, was to eliminate exactly this type of.
No, it actually made it. All it did, it took out superfluous words. Twice I've used superfluous. They took out those words, extra words that talked about if you check box 8A, then you're not protected by 5A, which was ridiculous anyway. Of course you're not, because you're not subject to the CFPB requirements if you're a cash buyer. So that's the only reason they took it out. But I remember, I don't think there was anything hidden there.
So to be competitive then, maybe you were talking this before while I wasn't here because I was late. So I'm sorry.
It reminds me of my Catholic childhood.
Right.
Just admit everything 3 times and you're good.
That's what I'm very for what I said. But so to be competitive in this market, you've got a financing buyer, very confident they're going to close, right? They're stellar qualification. If you check the cash buy, the only thing they're really risking is their escrow, right? There's no other risks involved in terms of
no. As long as they don't breach other terms of the contract, they're just saying they're bringing cash, and if they they can't be sued if they for anything other than their escrow. If and it's hard to say definitely,
right?
Everyone could sue anyone,
right?
But really, the remedy for not being able to close because you haven't got to close the table with cash would be for your escrow to go. And there may be other damages that the seller could go for, but it depends on each contract. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. And people are doing it all the time just to get round.
Yeah.
But just be careful, and really, if the buyer's going to do it, just say this is a risk.
Yeah.
And you've got to be 100% confident that you're going to get this money from somewhere. A lot of people now, especially, well, it's not so much today, but money was really cheap. And why take your 5% investment, right? But when you can get a 3% loan?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's going to work itself out in the wash. But
I have a question. Let's say we have this exact scenario and then come 3 days prior to closing, they don't get to close for the loan, even though it's supposed to be cash.
Yep.
And they want to extend the closing date. As the listing agent, am I allowed to say, no, this is a cash deal and get it back on the market if they choose to?
You, as a listing agent, you couldn't. Being
Of course.
pedantic, yeah, but as the seller could say, hell no, we need to get this sold.
Yeah.
Wait,
I mean, no,
but you
always they
wait
can say
for
no
the-
to extending the closing, but the fact
Yeah.
that they went from cash to now getting a loan really changes the contract. I'm so surprised that this is legal.
I don't think it changes it at all.
In the last 3 months, where, and I have one right now in our contract where they're doing financing, I have the listing. And they asked for an appraisal, the appraisal could go out, and I told my seller, well, technically they could, but they have to bring cash to the table. Where will they get their cash? They just have to close some cash,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
financing.
Yeah, and let's most people, I know a lot of you do because you're real estate agents, most people don't have 800 grand sitting around.
Oh, really?
I know you guys do. I mean, but I literally would not be able, if I wanted to buy 800 grand cash thing, I'd be cashing in 401k, selling one of my kids. And,
Definitely sell the kid.
yeah, then I think that's most probably for 90%. I don't know. I live in Claremont, Florida. We got 3 cows and a lake. I'm very sheltered there. But I think most people, when they're saying they're a cash buyer, they're getting money, they're drawing it against 401ks.
Yeah.
They're getting that money. They just haven't got they don't go to the bank and go, can I have 800,000 please and bring it in a suitcase. So it's the same with a mortgage. A mortgage is basically the same as borrowing from your 401k. So I think we've maybe programmed ourselves to think of the mortgage as the finance. There's lots of other ways that things are financed.
Murray, can you go back to that what Chris said? I'm sorry. Because those of us that are doing luxury, most of them pay cash, right? Most of your people pay cash, right? Most everybody that's doing luxury pays cash. The question is, even on the people that are not luxury, that have decided they can pay cash, but they really want to mortgage it as well.
Yeah.
What is our right if we're the buyer? If Chris is the selling agent, what is our right to the selling agent to say, we're allowed to do an appraisal? You're going to come to the table.
Absolutely. You can, in fact, cash buyers should always be encouraged to do an appraisal.
Yeah, sure.
Because they're the ones that are more at risk.
Right.
Because they may just get what's the word? Just careless and just think, oh, I'm buying this. And I've done stupid stuff like that. We sold a house in Tennessee before we were in real estate, and my wife said, "Oh, I'm going to stick a sign in the yard." How I wish I could go back in time and beat Murray up. It was a corporate move, and we really didn't care. But when I look back, we most probably sold the house for 50 grand, and this was 2001 or whatever, 1999. And we literally and we had no clue what the house was worth. We just were happy because we got more money than we paid for it a year ago.
So how do you deal with the agent on the other side? So Chris is the selling agent.
It's in the contract. You've got a right of access to do appraisals.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Standard L.
Is it standard L?
Standard L.
Yeah. Standard L. You've got a right to inspect, a right to do appraisals, and the seller's got to give, with reasonable notice, got to give access.
Unless you say inspection for information purposes.
Well, you still have a right to access for inspection too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, unless you put 0 in the inspection days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, then if you put 0 in paragraph 12 for your inspections, that means you cannot inspect the property. You've got an appraisal inspection is totally different.
Gotcha.
That's another right of access.
So in the as is, in this situation, that it says in the contract something about the appraisal as well, that you can have access,
Yeah.
even if it's marked as cash.
Even if it's marked as cash.
Even if you're out of inspection.
Even if you're out of inspection.
Where does that stand?
Standard L, as in leopard.
It's back to those legal pages that you never looked at.
Yeah, the standard.
It is, I mean, that's honestly where it is.
I call them the wordy bits. The wordy bits at the back where you go, where you go from.
West of the contract.
Yeah.
That is good.
I gotta remember that Squarespace.
That's a play over there.
So if I just heard right, so I just did an inspection extension.
Mhm.
So I didn't have to do that.
Only if, what was the reason for the inspection extension?
They just wanted to get another plumber in there.
Oh, no, that's totally
Cast
done.
iron.
We're talking about two different things. The
Okay.
property inspection is paragraph 12. Yes, you would want it, if you've got to do that. But the appraisal access can be anytime,
Okay.
yeah, within in it.
Okay.
So there's basically three times you can be in the property. And we use this a lot when we're doing board hearings for code of ethics, when agents have just strolled into a listing and, you know, it's a vacant home, they've got a contract, and they just go in with take grandma in there to measure carpets and stuff. You're allowed in, you're a trespasser if you're not there during the inspection period with seller's approval for appraisals and for the final walkthrough on the day of or the day before closing. And that's the only time you can access a property. And when these agents just come and hit your lockbox on, you know, for random reasons, that's how the board will get you.
Does that final walkthrough have to be the day before?
Day off or the day before.
It can't be like 2 days before.
And I advise you never to do the final walkthrough until the place is clear of property. On the way up, anyone in here talk to me on the way up here this morning? One of my calls on the way up. Anybody want to buy a car radio? On the way up here this morning, one lady, she had a final walkthrough, and it was once they moved the furniture, then the carpets underneath were disgraceful. Well, one, is there anything we can do about it? That's probably not if you didn't do an inspection. If you didn't do an inspection, you're worried about the carpets and move the furniture because you're buying it in its as-is condition. But don't do the inspection when the furniture's still in there in case you have got a right. And things get damaged. My Fridays are littered with pianos going through drywall and people kicking sides of doors in and
So,
nuts.
In the day.
you go back to, I'm so sorry. In terms of, you just said moving stuff to inspect carpet and such. Were you saying the expectation you should have done it when you did your inspection, or
If you're worried about
final walkthrough?
if you're worried about dirty carpet and you're on an as-is contract,
Right.
your buyer should be aware that once they do the final walkthrough, if there is a blood-stained body outline under that sofa, that's theirs.
Yeah.
They own
During the
it.
final walkthrough, at that point, it's
Too late.
it has to be during the inspection period.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have no recourse. Got it.
Yeah.
So what, on the final walkthrough, what can you flag as a concern?
Perfect question. And the contract says the purpose of the final walkthrough, again, it's in the flyover states in the back of the contract. And I don't judge you for not reading it because I only read it when I started doing this broker gig because it just was a lot of nonsense. But it says somewhere in there that the purpose of the walkthrough is to ensure that the property is in its as-it-is condition. And the as-is condition was at the time of execution of the contract. So if there's a hole in the drywall behind the cabinet that was there when you were executed, it would actually be a breach of contract if it wasn't there when you hired. And as funny as it may sound, I have had this argument with people. I had a broker call me one day and said, there's loads of screw hole. I'm back in this house. I don't know if you've seen this. It's a new modern thing to put tiles on a wall. Have you seen this? They're like glass or chrome, and they're on stairwells and embedded. They give space. And damn you, home and garden television. But the person took them off the wall. Well, they'd already agreed that they would be going. So it wasn't a real property versus personal property, which we're going to talk about in a minute. This was about the screw holes.
Yes.
And the broker said they had to be fixed. I said, no, they don't. He said, they've got to be fixed. You can't just leave screw holes. I said, sir, I don't want to argue with you because it's unfair. So English, aren't I? That's such an English comment. But I don't want to argue with you, but those screw holes were there when you bought the property. It would be wrong of us to fill them. Anyway, I can't follow your thing. I said, I know, I'm sorry about that. But that's true though. You don't fill in screw holes because you're going
to. You have to fill in the mount for your TV. If you take TV mount.
No. And the amount's got to stay
Yeah, the amount's not supposed to stay.
now under the new contract. But let's just
Then you have to, well, you know.
yeah, in the new contract, the amount stays. If they negotiate the amount away, then talk to the other side. If you really feel like you want to fill those holes,
What had
then
that conversation.
talk
had
about it.
exactly that situation. We walked through and this woman was a very crafty person and had stuff everywhere. And there were 140 screw holes, nail holes in one room.
Right.
And it was just insane. So we wound up, they wound up giving them a credit to have it addressed because it was
I've had
repainting and everything.
I've
else
had
too.
deals fall apart where people have gone round and touch up paint with 5-year-old paint, and the house looks like it's got scabies.
Well, I know, right? What's worse? Is
Yeah.
140 dots.
I'm sorry. I'm pointing over.
So what I do for my final walkthrough is mainly look for any sort of structural problems, especially like underneath sinks and leakage.
Right.
I may have not seen on the inspection report, so that would, if there was like a leak.
If it was there before, you own that, you bought that leak.
Yeah.
And the thing you should be looking for in the final walkthrough is all personal property removed?
Yes.
And is personal property that has been included in the sale there? And is the condition of the property the same as at the time? So it's very important, when we're going under contract with people, and you do your, I don't do sales, so I don't know what you say to these people when you're walking through the house, but here's the kitchen. I think you tell them that the kitchen's there, in case they don't know. Here's the bedroom. But you say to them, look, there is this damage. There's this hole in the drywall. Is this okay? Do you want them to fix it? Do you want me to put into the contract that we're going to fix this hole in the drywall? You do luxury out here, so I doubt you have drywall. It's all marble.
So going back to your scenario there for a second, how you said the leak is in there, right? It was there. How do you know whether or not it was leaking when you executed on the contract?
Because good inspectors will photograph under the sink. I think
They all do.
Right.
Yeah. And when someone says to you, we're going to do 0 inspections.
Right.
You pretty much signed your death warrant. There literally could be, anything wrong with that house, and you bought it like that because you couldn't prove that it's going to be in its as-is condition.
But what if? I'm so sorry. But what
no,
if
I love this.
The inspector, there was no leak when the inspector did
it. You can say the inspector can say if it, no one's going to court over a U-bend. Yeah. But you could hold up the closing and maybe negotiate some money to get it fixed. And in that situation, the likelihood is not so much the leak, it's the damage it would have caused over 90 days or however long you've been under contract.
So does this mean that when you're walking through a house, you should really be looking behind every single photograph or every piece of art to make sure there's no hole in the wall?
No, I think you should say to the buyer, what's your tolerance? If you're worried about nail holes and bloodstained carpets, then tell the inspector to itemize everything that you're going to be worried about, and then most probably not in this market, but we would ask the seller to repair them.
Well, I got to tell you, my house alone, my husband destroyed a wall and we hit it with a piece of art. So if somebody came and looked, they would see this horrible. I mean, we fixed it. It's been fixed, but for over 2 years, there was a horrible whole time. What are the pieces of art? So nobody would have known that if they hadn't.
It's weird when you live,
it is fixed. That's my husband.
When you're in a house. Well, I've lived. My wife kept moving. I was told we're not moving anymore. But my wife's one of the people that likes to move every few years. We've moved there. 23. The oldest daughter said she's had 23 homes in 26 years, and a lot of them were 6 months here, 6 months there. But now I said to my wife, I said, look, I want to stay in this house. We've kind of really downsized, and we've gone to try and say, well, this is the house they're going to carry me out of. Not soon, I hope, but that's the house going to carry. It's modest. But when you've been in it a couple of years, when you've been only in the house a short time, you really don't look at it critically. You're just like, well, now we've been in this house 3 or 4 years. I said, she comes to the other. Now look at the kitchen, the baseboards in the kitchen, all scuffed and all. Well, only painted 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and so I said to her, I said, if we ever did sell a house and we'd own for a long while, you have to get someone to come in and look at it critically, because I do not notice that. You don't notice the stuff in your own house, and I think when the rose-colored glasses that buyers have when they're looking at a property. Oh, I love this place. Look at this view out there. And the man's in the garage. Oh, I love his garage. That's it. But they're not seeing the cracked bathtub or the tiles that are cracked in the kitchen, or the dirty grout.
I just did a walkthrough last week with a buyer, and we had never noticed that the bathroom had the worst paint job ever. And she's like, I can't believe how we all missed it.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. Luckily, it's just paint, but it's funny how you do overlook.
You do massive things. Engineers don't.
Pilots either.
Pilots and engineers. They got it all mapped out. But yeah, I don't notice anything. We lived in Tennessee for 6 months, and there was a room I didn't even know existed until I read the realtor's report when we sold it. Apparently, there was a room at the end of one of these mansions, in Tennessee. We moved from Michigan, and we were fairly well off in Michigan. We went to Tennessee. We were billionaires to buy a house. We lived in this fancy North Shore in Knoxville. It's like I had a copper porch. I'd moved out like a ranch in Detroit. And the money was so different. Tennessee money's different.
Yeah.
But there was an upstairs, and it was like L-shaped upstairs, and down the end there was the kids' room, and I went down and said, "Good night, darlings." But next to there was another little playroom. Never went in. Never knew it existed. Man, my wife brings that up every time when we ever look for a house. She goes, "Why don't you go and have a look around and see if there's any rooms?" I know, I like the garage and the backyard. That's all I'm interested in.
Murray.
Yeah.
Could you touch on, I know it makes you cringe about personal property.
No, I was going to do that. I'm excited about that.
So I've had several where the home came with personal items or everything in an estate, especially. Yeah. So what do you do in the case of, I know you always say rooms to go, but if something's not there that was there, right? What do we do?
You don't ever call me, because I will tear your head off. Because it's not, and this has been, and for those of you that are fairly new, personal property, we don't sell personal property. And I say, we're not rooms to go, we sell houses. The contract allows us to sell a few little bits that are on that 1 or 2 lines, 20-ish, that say, including the following personal property: washer, dryer, garden gnome on front porch, period. End of story. If there is more than just a few items, and don't do this to me, all items as seen on MLS and such and such, that is the most craziest thing anyone could ever do. Personal property. So if they're buying a house and it's a vacation rental and it's got all these knives and forks, ping pong table. I argue more about ping pong tables on Fridays with Davenport with short-term rentals than I should. So if it's personal properties conveying, there's a beautiful little section in the wordy bits, the flyover states, but right at the back of the contract, it's called conveyance. And it's around about line 450. And it says personal property will be conveyed by absolute bill of sale, period. That's telling you. So if you do anything other than that, you failed in your duty of care to your customer, and you can get ripped apart and thrown in jail, beaten.
Who is supposed to write up the bill of sale?
Good question. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
It's a matter of preference, but what I suggest you do, if you're on a standard contract and you're not yet executed, remember there's going to be no right to cancel just because not everything's on that bill of sale, because the reason for the bill of sale is to take it away from the contract so that we're not arguing about ping pong tables and ping pong balls on closing day. That's a separate little contract between the buyer and seller. So mostly on the as-is contract, during the inspection period, you just walk through the house, the buyer will jot down everything that they want, then it's their fault if there's something not on there. So when they come to the end of the closing day and they're doing the final walkthrough and the toaster oven's missing in the kitchen, we go back to the bill of sale and say to the buyer, okay, you didn't have toaster oven written down. If it had toaster oven written there and the toaster oven's gone, then that's a civil matter between the buyer and seller. It won't hold up our closing. So many times, countless times, we've had to hold up the closing for the agents have put in the contract, shelving in garage. And the shelving in garage was not a fixture, it was just freestanding shelving. If it was fixed to the wall, then we're good.
So if that situation happens and that toaster oven's not there and the buyer wants it, they really can't say at the closing table, well, I want you to credit me $40.
They can, and the seller can say, no, you're going to have to sue me in small claims court for the bill of sale.
And Murray, on the luxury properties, we started adding in the brand of the refrigerators, the brand of the appliances.
I think it's a good idea to take a photo of them and the serial numbers.
The refrigerator was dead, they replaced it with the refrigerator, and we had it in the brand of the refrigerator.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. I would do that. I would take it away from the contract just because it's going to be useful for your final walkthrough. So refrigerator is in the personal property pre-printed items. And that's why they had that big block, because they are the items that require some kind of engineering to put in, because refrigerators can have ice makers and that kind of stuff. Washer and dryer, they didn't put in. And I've questioned them why. And I'm actually on the committee that writes these darn things. And I've asked them and they say, half the state, it's not a thing. People don't, in some areas in South Florida, they don't want people to leave their washer and dryer. So it's only us fancy people up in St. Pete, in Claremont.
I did a reverse. I sold a cabin up in the mountains there, and I wanted everything to remain. I didn't take it except for some items. And what I did was actually go room to room to room. What's not remaining?
What was not remaining
in the contract?
Yeah. Here we don't want it in the contract at all.
They want it in there. I wasn't doing real estate.
Right. No. And it could. We literally have had people count the knives and forks in the drawers in these short-term rentals and hold up closing because there's only 11 knives and 12. People know I'm busy.
Or Murray, Jack, where are you putting? I like the idea of the brand of the refrigerator. Where can we put that?
Just on a plain bit of paper. Just take a note of it.
ID tag.
Okay, don't write it in here.
Not in the contract, no.
Okay.
It wouldn't make sense because, again, if it turns out that it isn't that fridge, we've got the right, regardless of what we've written in the contract, because refrigerator, it says in the contract as what's the word? Existing at the time of the offer.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing to think to ask questions when you're listing a property is, what don't you own here? Is there anything here that's rented? And oddly enough, people rent salt making machines for pools. I didn't know that was a thing. They're $600, $60 a month to rent. 10 months, you'd own it.
Yeah.
Don't get that.
It's like a water softener.
What about, since it's real popular now, solar?
Oh, please don't. Please don't. The little light on my tomb is going to be illuminated by a solar panel that's $5,000 a month for 43 years. Yeah. But I can sell electricity.
Some of them are leased. You don't actually own it.
A lot of them are leased.
Yeah.
And again, it's the big hot topic. Because the agent's not asking the right questions at the listing appointment. And when they are asking the question, they're getting the wrong answer. So you've got solar panels. Yes. Will they convey with the house? Yes, they will. Are they going to be included in the purchase price? No, we're looking for 40,000. Okay, good luck with that. And we then find out from the solar company that they cannot be conveyed. They've got to be paid off at closing. So that then stops up. So there's all permutations with solar panels. We're going to be dealing with this for years and years and years. And hopefully the next rendition of the contract, they'll try and address some of these issues like they did in the last one with the short-term rental days of Airbnb and Verbo, whatever they call it. Do you call it VRBO or Verbo? Just quick. Both. I was in Europe and the TV adverts say Verbo.
Right.
Yeah,
the TV adverts.
Lazy. I like We're more eloquent here, aren't we? BRBO.
Right.
Yes, that's what we are. According to the British. I'm sorry, that's the contract now, I missed that, must be the flyover section.
What's that?
The short-term rentals.
It's a rider, double D. Always makes me laugh. I'm such a schoolboy. I'm such a schoolboy.
This is again one from last answer.
I love him.
I don't know how relevant it is to contract.
That's okay.
Relevant contract, but it's like all safety, you barely everybody does.
It's so prevalent.
That doesn't make any sense. I don't know how it is. Like you're here, obviously, huge. You go on Airbnb in Nellis County, find 2,000, 3,000 Airbnbs. But I'm pretty sure the city of St. Pete or Nellis County say you're not allowed to do it. And obviously, investors and buyers are like, hey, I want to rent Airbnbs, and we're like, you can't, but you can't.
This is really good. I'm glad you brought that up because we have a case at the moment. I can't too much details, but the case is that we're being sued because, well, no, we're in the early stages. We could be sued. They're sending demand letters, but we put that there was no lease restrictions in the MLS, and when you look in the MLS, and I had to go in the back door and have a look to see where you put all your stuff in, it's in the HOA section. So are there any lease restrictions? And it said no, because there was
HOA or management company.
Right, but there wasn't even an HOA. So what the attorney for the buyer is saying is that by us not checking that, and it's all, the veracity of the case, don't worry about it, they got nothing. But his argument is we didn't put lease restrictions in there, but when they went to bought the place, they were going to use it for Airbnb, and the city said they couldn't. So there was a lease restriction, and we lied about it. So I'm sure, not that the case is going to most probably go anywhere.
They have their inspection.
They do. But it made me think, if there isn't an HOA, should that box be in there and clearly labeled in MLS? Are there any HOA lease restrictions? So I've written a strongly worded letter to the CEO of Stella asking them to put that in, because it could be misconstrued, because if someone's looking at that, are there lease restrictions? No. Oh, great, I can lease it out. So I think it should say, are there HOA or condominium lease restrictions? Yes, no. Because this has got lease restrictions.
Please verify, like, I don't know.
That's
what lease restrictions.
Yeah, verify.
I put verify all measurements, verify all.
That's the best thing, verify everything. Yeah, I mean, they should anyway, but it's good to put it in the realtor remarks.
It changed when I listed it, but 3 months later, they could have changed the rule. It's not my job.
Verify, buyers responsible for getting HOA information. All the sellers responsible for it is to the best of their knowledge, say how much the HOA is costing.
Yeah, this too.
And I talk to someone every week about HOA, that transfer fee. Always gets missed, and everyone's very miserable at the table because it can go up to 5,000, some of them.
So if we list the condo, we don't have all the condo docs, don't we have to supply them?
You do with the condo, but with an HOA, the buyer has to find them.
Right, we don't do anything for an HOA. You give them a website address and we get the buyer's responsibilities.
You're right. You're always right, Jack. Yeah, you bought me scotch. You can do no wrong.
That's all it takes. Wow, there we go. So back to his question though, it's the seller that has to provide the
condo, yeah. And you're never fully executed on that contract until the condo docs have been supplied to the seller.
And you have to have it checked on that form that they have received them.
Yes. So don't. I love this because it's funny. It's like reliving my past week. This week, someone had put the condo rider on the attachments filled out by the seller, and they'd already checked that the documents had been received. So we then have to get into arguments. Well, I've then got to go back and prove when that was put in there and who put it in there. So don't check those boxes, or make sure they're not checked if you're going to pull them off, and immediately tell them.
We require the receipt of condo docs here, so that we know exactly when that contract starts. It's not filled out on the rider, and there's a receipt.
But if you had provided the condo docs to the buyer, right, and you're filling out that rider there, you check the box, What's wrong with it?
No, that's fine if you have, but this has just had the rider and no docs.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I should have said to explain more. I hate condos.
Me too.
You know, they're
not getting any better either.
I know, Florida.
Yeah, for sure, it's gonna be.
Oh, I mean, we're now finding people backing out. A couple have backed out from the Seminole office this week, where they suddenly found out how much their insurance is, and then suddenly found out how much their capital contribution is going to be for the refit for the safety issues from the Miami tragedy. So, you know, but buyers have really got to do their due diligence.
Is there anything we should be? I'm sorry. Anything we should be doing to protect ourselves when it comes to on the buy side, right? In terms of providing content with docs and all that other stuff. I mean, I think we should go above and beyond just to make sure we're when it comes to that kind of thing. In terms of assessments that you know,
I think you should tell your buyer, you know, again, I say this more than I should, but I'm going to say it again, the customer service and liability are bedmates.
Yeah.
The moment you start being, you know, what lies over and above is a barren field. Never go there, Simba. There is badlands. You've got to be nice. And I know it's so hard for you guys because you just want to help these people.
Right.
But you want to say to them, let's go find out some more information about this and then take them on that journey with you so that they hear it from the horse's mouth. You know, we have some great stories about Polk County. That's Yellowstone, right there. You can great judge. By the time you can call Polk County and ask them a question about permits, and you speak to Hilda, and she'll tell you one thing, and the next day you speak to Jethro, he'll tell you another thing. So if you do it and then you relay that information to your buyer, you're the one that's giving the wrong information.
Right.
So have the buyer go on the phone and say, hey, buyer, talk to Jethro here. He's going to tell you all about permits.
But you teach that at night, don't go to Polk County.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Polk County, there's some great buys there. I mean, if you want to.
You can live there?
No, I drive through, you know, we have a condo down in Vero, so we drove through there and I look at all that land and think, man, I would love to have a little bit of South Fork out there. 5 acres of wetlands.
That's the same thing with the short-term rental, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Have them do the due diligence. Provide that information to them.
And because we don't know, you know, some cities, because if you called the city and you spoke to a lady in the planning office and said, is it okay if we do Airbnbs? Oh yeah, but people do it all the time. It's not the same as, yes, you're authorized to do Airbnb. And people do it, and just because the neighbor's doing it doesn't mean you can do it.
Right.
Yeah, I like to email if I don't want to call. I email them and say, please send me the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Email them, I can forward it on to my buyer.
And if you've been to my 11 Ways Real Estate Agents Get into Trouble class, I talk about that horrible one where the buyer's agent gave the buyer the homeowner's documents because she lived in the neighborhood herself, but she'd missed the meeting and the new regulations which said that you couldn't lease properties out in the subdivision. The guy bought it, and then when the HOA came to the welcome wagon came with his gingerbread cake and muffins basket, checkered towel, and she said, "Oh, welcome to the neighborhood. We're very happy to have you." He goes, "Oh, I'm not going to live here. I'm renting it out." She grabbed her basket back and said, "What do you mean you're renting it out?" I said, "Well, I'm renting it out." And she said, No, you can't. We changed the rules last year. You can't rent the place out for a year. So the agent had to rent the place for a year and leave it empty while we enlisted it for free, and it got sold, I think, in late month 5. We relisted it for free, and we had to eat all the costs in that as well. So be careful. It just don't give them the HOA docs because you never know. Jen, what?
I actually have a townhome under contract right now. I have the listing side, and the buyer could not get the HOA documents because they reached out because they were they were not the owner, and the HOA association said, no, you're not the owner. So my seller reached out, was nice, very nice seller, said, I'll get the HOA documents, and I reported them on. Is there any ability in that?
If they're wrong, then the buyer's agent most probably got the problem. But if I don't think there will be a problem, because they're going to be the most up-to-date docs. They would be the same ones that the buyer got anyway. But as long as you've got a track, you know, the seller got them and you pass them on to the buyer. Yeah, it's more the buyer's risk than yours.
So can I get this clear, because I'm a little fuzzy on this? So we are not supposed to get the HOA docs as the buying agent?
The buyer should help them. But
so just give them the management company's name and say,
yeah, give them all the information. But you know, mouth's broken. The townhome. Remind me to say townhome after I've talked about it.
As the buyer's agent, you're able to get the HOA.
No, that's what he's saying. You're not.
That's what
the buyer gets it, not the agent. The agent should never ever give them, you know, because go with them, but don't be the one. Because of Susan with her renting the house out because she gave the wrong ones to her buyer, even though she lived in the neighborhood. She thought she was on the committee. I don't know what she does. You know, those HOA meetings, you know. I've been on an HOA before. Went on the HOA because if I couldn't beat them, join them. And I will never live in an HOA again. Never, ever, 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 ever. It was the Third Reich. Hated them. Yeah, they fined me for having a boat in my yard for an hour over 13 hours. They timed my boat on my yard because I brought it home at the weekend. It's a lake community. It could be in the water, but it couldn't be on a driveway. Had a 12 hours a week, you're allowed to get it out for cleaning. Hour 13, got fined. I'm sorry, America. This is not working out.
Yeah, exactly.
Townhome. What the heck is a townhome?
Shared wall.
Shared wall. So a townhome is a type of property. It's not a legal thing, because we get people to think that a townhome is always going to be a condo. It might not be. A townhome's a townhome. It's like a description rather than a legal thing. You just look in the legal description, it'll tell you whether it's a condo or not.
Townhomes can be condos.
They can be condos, and they can also just be HOAs, and they can be nothings.
They can be single families.
They can be single families. They could be, like someone said the other day, was link attached. What's the link attached? Townhome.
Going back to your who can supply the HOA documents. So you're saying that the buyer requests it, so we're not even allowed to request it from the management company at all.
You can. So
you can do that, and then
you can.
Just copy the buyer.
Yeah, don't overthink this. What I don't want you to do is say, you know, a customer service in the back of my car, I have a Rolodex thingy, and I have every HOA document for every community. And I've seen agents do that, and they'll pluck out, here we go. And it's, you know, if it's a day out of date, we're in trouble. If you know, one of them we had, you know, 3 pet minimum, got reduced to 2. Sorry, Fido. One of you's got to go.
Okay.
So yeah, you can take the dog home.
So if they email you back with those HOA documents, you got that from the management company,
you can just forward that email on.
Forwarding, okay.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah, you're not giving it to them.
But we're not allowed to provide our own.
No, even if you live in the community, like poor Susan.
I think that work meeting that day and then changes the night of.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And I know it's extreme, but it's happened. And if it happens once, it'll happen again.
Yeah.
And there's no, you know, you say to your buyer, I know it's hard, but you say to your buyer, look, this is an HOA. You have got to feel comfortable that all the rules and regulations are going to fit in with your lifestyle. Pickup trucks. Down in Sarasota, we had the pickup truck because it had GH window washer on the side of the pickup truck. They weren't allowed to bring it into their house.
Yeah.
And they didn't find that out until after they'd moved in, when they show up with the muffins in the basket.
Now, another question is, let's say you have a 30-day contract, they get the HOA documents to you, pay for, but then they change the HOA regulations say like they're not on the lease or anything like that, and then you agree, you know, the contract goes through, closing, everything happens. What is that just on the buyer then?
I've never heard of anything that's happened like that. I've heard of it happen with condo.
Yeah.
In Seminole, and we had a condo do that. That during the period of our contract, there was an assessment occurred.
Right. Things like that. And so that's just on the buyer, that's their liability.
Yeah, and they had to eat it.
Yeah.
But they did file an ethics complaint against the listing agent.
Yeah. And did that go through? I mean,
yeah, it did.
Probably would be on the list agent then to update you.
Yeah, they filed an ethics complaint against the listing agent, and they were found guilty.
Interesting.
Can we go over that, actually, talking about an assessment? Because I ran into a condo or a townhome recently that said there was an assessment. But I don't know if this should be decided yet what the fee would be and what it was for roof or whatever. So what, as agents, should we do?
Disclose everything that you know. So if you know there's a pending assessment, then you have to disclose it. Chances are it's going to be in the minutes of, and that's the other thing is, you know, encourage your buyer to read the condo docs they're given.
Well, they hadn't received them yet because we haven't written an offer because we wanted to know what that was for. Was it the roof? Is it a $20,000 assessment? Right. But I don't think they had determined all the details yet. So the listing agent just said, call the association. They didn't really give us any information. What do we do?
I would call the association. You know, I wouldn't rely on the listing because that's most very important information. If the listing agent gets it wrong, then your buyer's going to be sad. Not that it was your fault, but it's going to come back at you. So I would do as much due diligence as you can, because all the seller has to do is to give as much information as they know. And then obviously the minutes of the association should have some talk about it, but if they don't know the amount, you just got to prepare your buyer and say, hey, you know, I don't know what this is going to be. You're okay with it? And there's been some big ones lately because of this, the refits, the safety. Oddly enough, our condo, 3-4 years ago, we had a 7,000 for the balcony. They call it concrete cancer. The balconies were all bubbling. They redid everything, and they did it prior to this because now all the companies just jack their prices up, and but we got lucky to have the problem early. Right, what else? Yes.
So as is contracts, you know, there's a duplex and one of the tenants is kind of crazy, and basically you go in to do your inspection and you know walk through, and then at closing one of the units is all torn up and stuff like that, and you know say, well, this isn't as is condition as when we did the walkthrough. Like, okay, is that something that gets credited at closing, or do they actually have to come out of pocket to pay for the renovations and everything?
Good. So the contract gives you a nice little section, and I think I have one here. It's a hidden line. It's one of those lines that it's like a telephone box that's in a village that no one ever sees. You don't watch Doctor Who. In the contract, in paragraph 9, there's a little line 142. It's in cost to be paid by seller. And it's one of those flyover things you see, your closing costs, documentary interest, owners thing. And right in these little lines, it said, if prior to closing, seller is unable to meet the as-is maintenance requirement required by paragraph 11, a sum equal to 125% of the estimated cost to meet the as-is maintenance requirement shall be escrowed at closing. So if you get there and there is blood on the carpet that wasn't there prior, then this section allows 125% of the seller's proceeds to be escrowed. Once that's so it can go ahead, close. Once that's fixed, the change is given back. Now I always get the question, how do we know what it's going to cost? I don't know. That's your job. You're going to have to go and find a carpet person, or now mostly it's it's normally green pools that I deal with this the most, or lawns that have not been watered. So if your seller says we're moving, and they move and they shut the water off, and the lawn doesn't get, just remind the seller they're going to be buying a lawn on closing day for 125% of their proceeds and stay behind. So that's where you would do that.
Okay.
It's going to be a hard one if they've really torn it up a lot as to what that estimate is. Yeah. You may have to delay the closing to get the estimates.
And if the tenant's so crazy that they like almost won't even let you see that side of the unit, you know, the buyer's kind of like, well, it's the same year build, it's probably just the same as the one on the left that we can get into. And it's like, well, you're kind of running a risk there.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna just put your camera up to the window and take pictures of the inside, or
are we cooking meth in there?
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, yeah. So I mean, what would you do in that scenario? Because you obviously don't want to, you know, put the
the buyer's got to make up their mind whether they really want it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's possible that we get that. I have bought a house like that, but I bought the house. But I was allowed in the property, but that's possible that that buyer can't go into the property to see it. Like,
well, you've got to have access.
That, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, they have to have access, but sometimes buyers are, because they can't get access, they, especially in this market, we've had people not even seen us move down here, and first time they've seen it is when they moved in. Nuts. That made me think of something else. Oh yeah, renters.
Yeah, I got a section where I bought my house, and it didn't match at all. The pictures at all.
Oh, I know.
Pictures were from 5 years ago, and I was like, well, that's why the house is sold, because and nobody wants it. And I said, but you know what? I'm gonna fix this stuff. Flip it. 2 years. That's it.
If any agent from this office has called or texted me with a question that we talked about today, I mean, not in this class, there'll be the bloodstained carpet. I'm so English. Sometimes I say to people, my wife says, you mustn't say that, it's very rude. But I had a question the other day, someone called me and I said, oh, I thought I saw you in my class when I talked about this yesterday. They, oh no, were you teaching the class yesterday? Oh. I know you've got busy lives. You're out there getting HOA documents for your buyers and stuff. Renters, tenants. Stop writing things in the contract about renters and tenants. I see things all the time that my police force, Cat is a sergeant in. I have this police force out there that send me photos of paragraph 20s, and I keep them with additional terms. And one day I'm going to just name names and publish a book. But if you put things in there like the renter will stay for 4 days after closing, then you have committed a felony. So don't put anything about renters. There's nothing in there that you need to put about renters. All you have to do with renters that are going to stay after closing is check 6B. On paragraph 6B, you just check that box and then let fly the buyer and seller who go to that standard D of the contract, D as in David, which tells them what to do. So yes, you're under contract now. Yes, there's going to be a tenant there. And standard D says they're going to exchange the leases. They're going to do an estoppel letter as to where the escrow, where the security deposit's escrowed, how the keys are going to be transferred, all that kind of stuff. It's all in the contract already. So as soon as you start writing about it, you've undone, because the written word overdoes the print word, you've undone the good of the contract that 4 or 5 tired brokers have sat in a room and hashed out for 4 years. Makes sense. Yeah.
So you wouldn't put like we say it's state determination is, you know, X date, nothing.
Nothing.
It's already in the lease, right?
Yeah. So it's D, standard D pushes. And when these things are written, these contracts, they're written with having it in mind that they don't want you to do anything. And I don't demean the role of real estate agent. There's some people out there that shouldn't be doing it, but you know, there's the contract. As I said earlier, the contract part of it is a small part of it. You've got a vast job. The actual the contract, what they don't want, what the courts don't want you to do is put yourself in a position where you're practicing law. And up until the Supreme Court allowed us to do this, attorneys did all this. And Florida fought long and hard because it was the new frontier of development. They fought long and hard, the Florida realtors in that day, to say to the Supreme Court, we have to be able to help home buyers and sellers. Give us a tool. And they gave us this contract. And the contract itself has been cited in many cases where the judge has said, this is one of the best written contracts I've ever seen. The black and white bits. What you people put in the spaces is, but so don't, if it is a great contract, if you've been around contracts, you'll know it's very, very hard to write a contract. And just to write a phrase, just a simple phrase like, you call me sometimes and you say, how do I say that we want to do this? And I say, well, send it to me in everyday language, what you want to say. And I guarantee you, if you're anything like me, just putting it in everyday language is hard enough. And then we have to get it so that it's watertight. And then, let me pick one. I have them in my phone. Oh, hello, people that should be in this class. Text responses. So, okay, roof replacement. So, roof replacement. I see one I'm dealing with that right at the moment. The addendum written by an agent from a company with a balloon says the roof will be replaced.
What?
Exactly. With what? Blue tarps there. So the roof repair wording, and this I just knocked this up. It says the buyer and seller agree, which is already printed on there, but I was taught always to say that, and I clicked do. The buyer and seller agree that the roof will be replaced by the seller prior to closing. So who, when, using like materials with what as current roof. All permits will be applied for and closed out prior to closing. The work will be carried out by a licensed roofer and all warranties and invoices to be delivered to the buyer at closing. So how you write something like that, and I'm not ever suggesting you write anything, but if you feel, no, yeah, I can.
Wait till you screw up before this text.
So if I give it to you, I won't have a job anymore. No one will call me. I'll be lonely. I'll have to go back to England. And Harry Potter.
You have an Orlando?
Yeah, we do. Orlando's more English than England. It's like England with sun. So the roof repair thing. So if you think about it, it's just a story. You're imagining it with a clause in a contract. You're imagining every possible outcome and writing it down. So when you say to me, I want to write something like this, I say, text me everyday language and just say, we want to put a new roof on. Is the everyday language. And then that is what comes out at the end of the sausage machine. If you take it through in your mind, what's going to happen, who's going to do it, what's going to be the outcome, how can we protect, blah, blah. Thousands of questions. It's like deciding when you're dating someone. I remember those days. Last week. No, that was terrible. That was terrible. Now, I remember thinking to myself once, you're looking at someone, if you're dating someone, you think she says it was 30, 40 years ago, and you say, these are all the questions, these are all the things you're checking up in your mind. So when you're dating, just remember they're looking at you like replacing a roof. Asking what? Who's going to do? When's it going to happen?
Can we talk?
Is there a warranty?
That's an ethical question.
Yes, ethics.
Yes. So I had a situation where waterfront property, house went on the market on the MLS around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Buyer saw it, immediately jumped on it, wanted to see it. It was having trouble getting access, called the one listing agent, couldn't get through, wouldn't respond, called the other listing agent. Yeah, you can go walk it, just don't bother the tenants. So we walked to the property about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. 6 o'clock, I call with the message, my buyer's gonna put an offer on the house, he wants to put an offer in, what have you, we'll give it to you later on this evening. Send a text as well around the same time. Finally, around about 3 hours later, I get a response, homeowner under contract. And I told her in my voicemail, I said, it's gonna be above asking price, you know, what have you, let me know if you have any other offers, what have you. It says homeowner under contract. I responded to him, surprised that it was accepted the offer so quickly. It was a great offer. And explained my buyer was willing to go $100,000 over asking, what have you, was seeing where the offer was coming in. And all the response was, we had multiple offers. So the buyer demanded that I send him an email with the offer, please submit this as a backup offer. So I do that, I got a text response, spoke to the seller, we are not taking up backup contracts, okay? Fast forward, it finally closes. It's sold for $10,000 over asking. He was on both sides of the deal. And the buyer was trying to wholesale it off to other builders in the area. My buyer's well connected. He knows these builders. He found out that he was, you know, what have you. I mean, is there an ethical case there? Is there
likely? You know, it stinks. It doesn't pass a sniff test.
Right.
And the thing is, how would you ever prove it? You know, without getting subpoenas and.
Well, I got texts here from some of this.
But you'd have to prove that, you know, we'd have to know that nothing happened during that transaction. So, for instance, I've heard of one of these before. We were accused of it.
Right.
And we had both sides of the deal, and the agent broker called and said, you know, how come you sold this for 60 grand less than ours? And, you know, within the transaction, there was stuff found with the property, and we had to do some credits.
Right.
So we don't know what went on.
Right.
Is it annoying? Yes. Is it worth your energy trying to pursue it? No.
Right.
As my view.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, but it stinks. You're right.
The seller signed the offer. They
Yeah.
agreed to the terms. It sucks. It's not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it sucks.
It's terrible that they didn't do right by their seller.
In your case, and outside.
Yeah.
But you'd have to prove that.
The seller got an offer.
We got 10. We got 10 minutes. We can bare knuckle fight, or you can ask me more questions.
Sorry.
So the other thing with this situation that Brad has, that agent may be taking a much lower commission because he double-sided it, he or she. And so the seller maybe could have been having a higher profit because they had a lower commission. Maybe, I'm just throwing this out there.
You could check if they have checked the variable commission.
Situations.
But that has to be disclosed.
Oh, yeah, I know. You have to check it in the MLS.
You have to tell them that buyer's agent asked the listing agent what that variable commission is.
Absolutely.
Because they have to be on.
You have to. The variable commission thing saved our butts a lot of times, and we have a case in this office where we could have been in big trouble, but we have the variable commission. But I think I've had 3 cases in the last month where variable commission was checked, and that saved us in a multiple offer situation of allocation.
I do too. Always.
Yep.
Variable commission, for those of you that have not come up against it, is with the selling agent, the listing agent, sorry. The listing agent is going to get a lower commission if he takes both sides or she takes both sides of the deal. So you look in the MLS, and if it says variable commission and it's got 3%, 3%, you know most probably that if they sell it themselves, the listing agent's only going to get paid 4.5%.
I had an agent years ago, we had that same situation, and our offers, we had an offer, and he had his own buyer as well for the property, and we changed the offer based on the new commission and everything too, and he wound up saying, he said, I just don't even want to have any question about this at all. He said, so I'm going to advise my sellers to take your offer rather than my buyers, because he just wanted to completely avoid any smell of impropriety at all.
But I've seen that
Yes.
where sellers will just take the first good offer. Like, I mean, I've seen it where sellers are just like, it's 10K over, I don't care. You know, they just want to get out of the property, and they'll just take.
Be done.
Yeah, and they'll put the signatures on it.
This property, in this case, I mean, it was priced low. I mean, it was pretty obvious. And waterfront property for $700,000. In Snow Island. Or those, yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I think too.
Yeah, there's so many permutations, and I know that. I don't want to make any accusations, but I don't want to make any accusations. But the drug money, there are some transactions that beg our belief. However, there are some behind-the-scenes cash transfers that go on, and I talked to we actually talk to the FBI quite often because of this. This operation that they do in Florida about movement of money, and that's why we have to report what's it called, the financial whatever thing. But I've been talking to them. There's without saying too much. There are deals out there they're looking at where, like yours, where they would look at it and say, "Yeah, this is pretty strange. Why did this go for under?" And then they find out that in the background there was a stack of cash that moved. Drug and gun money. God bless this country. We should never have let you have it on your own.
Can you please repeat what you said about the variable commission?
Yes. When do you want me to do that? Now? What did I say? Oh, that it's that it means by having that checked in the MLS, it means that the listing agent is going to get less commission if they sell both sides. So it would be better for the seller to sell it to them, their buyer, rather than yours in some situations. And it gives you a heads up when you're doing, if you are in a multiple offer situation, and you can ask the buyer's agent, hey, do you have an offer in as well? I tell the listing agent, oh, what's the matter with me? You have the, and I always curse when people do that to me on the phone. The listing agent, ask the listing agent if they have an offer in for one of their buyers. They're not going to tell you, but you can ask them. Make them uncomfortable. Yeah, supposed to.
They're supposed to?
Yeah, I think the code of ethics is supposed to tell you.
So that you know that you can ask for the variable commission. Otherwise, you wouldn't know that you can adjust your offer accordingly.
I've got one more thing I want to say. One more thing I want to say on oh man, people.
That's it.
Exactly.
Who was it? If you can I just say I am very happy. I keep my phone on at night because I've got 4 kids and they're all don't live, they're all grown up. So I live 2 in Denver, 1 in London, 1 lives next door. She can tap on the window. I leave the phone on. I literally go to bed at 8 to 8:30 every night. I'm up at 4:30. Someone called me, texted me last night, 8:39. If I have multiple buyers wanting to put offers on the same home, do I have to disclose to everyone that I'm representing competing buyers? You understand the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
At 4:32 this morning, I replied to his text. Oh man,
It's the little things in life that get you in this number.
Hey Susan, stop giving out HOA. Oh hell, sorry. Here is paragraph 4B of the Florida Realtors Buyer Broker Agreement, which gives us guidance. So in 4B on the buyer broker, to answer your question, if you had that question, the buyer in the buyer broker agreement, it actually says in 4B, the buyer understands that broker may work with other prospective buyers who want to acquire the same property as the buyer. If the broker submits offers by competing buyers, broker will notify buyer that a competing offer has been made, but will not disclose any of the other offers material terms or conditions. And the buyer agrees that broker may make competing buyers aware of the existence of their offer as long as they don't reveal any of their secrets. Isn't that cute?
Yes.
And if you don't
Most
have a
of us don't have those signed.
It doesn't matter, but it gave us the word. It gave us the words to use.
Right.
And I'm using this as my parting phrase. But sometimes when we want to write something about repairs. We talked about roof, and you're on an as is. Go to the standard contract and steal some of the words from that. Like, it's working in the manner to which it was designed. Workman-like manner. They've got some lovely words in there. That's all I have at 1:27. It's been fun.
Yeah,
point.
Yeah.
So you signed my extension for, I think, the third time. So I only have 30 days left on the listing agreement and I want to extend it. So I just write an addendum.
Yeah, use the modification of listing agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Got the old Polk County lunch, Mountain Dew and grapes. It's just because you bought me scotch, might as well part of it.
This is going to be an escalation clause.
Yeah.
We have to trust the other agent. Send us a cost out. We just got one back where it cost me the escalation price like 3 times. But I was like,
yeah, there's some of them are trying to escalate another escalation clause. Ridiculous.
I don't know.
If I was a listing,
you have to trust what they send you.
Yeah, you do. Because basically they could just counter you at your highest price anyway. Yeah. Yeah, in this market, they could just counter you.
I'll never be able to do it. It's not like they cross out the agent, they cross out the buyers.
Yeah.
I could write it.
You could, but you're not a criminal.
As far as we know, as far as you know.
I'm gonna check to make sure that bottle has a bond on it.
Can we have this every week?
Oh my God,
that was good stuff.
Nice.
Thank you, the man. Thank you. Yeah. How are you not going to do stand-up? You got to do stand-up. I mean, you do it all day long, but you should do stand-up.
I was channeling talks about renting a house. He said he went to the house and the guys joined Why are you telling me where I can hear? So I steal bits of them. I have to do stuff. I have to get on a conference call. That's what I'm going
I just like this real quick on the very some agents, some hosting agents are doing they're taking 6%, they're taking 25 offering. Still need to track the variable. Okay, so it's only
Oh, yeah. I have to follow that.
Oh, it's nice.
give me a phone.
Sure.
So you got a buyer? Yeah. You write what for
I thought she was. Yes.
But you put one for
inspection of the they're doing all the repairs we want. And
man, somebody's watching.
No, it's not in there.
You have the buyer, you run wash and dry, so you do nothing about it. This thing, it's sort of about it. They said there's all three cars.
I think it's worse. So, okay, so.
Well, that's.
It's much more invested in
So I said, we never do this. We never have business mistakes. So she said, she made a mistake. So I said, well, maybe my buyer was happy if you guys need it. That's not part of it. One. She's like, now it's that anyway, right? Or I don't know. I just don't want to. I already legally. No, I think about that.
They've got to have the washer dryer that was there at the time. If it wasn't one there, or a bias on it.
Yes, and so they're like, yeah, I mean,
who's the buyer? Is it a friend?
No.
Let's see how it goes. But if you have any questions, the reason I'm home, I say tell someone something. I have to get on a conference call. I do, Jim.
Okay. All right. I just want to come say hi.
Well, I want to say hi.
That's all right. I'm wearing black. Well, except for this, you have t-shirt, so not much to look at. I know you need to get on call, but yeah.
I got to say, speak to Stormy.
Okay, but it's good to see you in person.
Oh, it's nice.
Well,
How much is it?
4 or 5. You got it in access with your forecast. It's my first year back. No, they adopted for me on the first year, so. Yeah. I never checked. Yeah. Because I so you did
That's the mile. You gotta go a mile.
Yeah, right. No, I'm gonna thank you. Just let you guys know. So everyone wants to go there early. I think there was. Excuse me. Oh my God. Yeah. No, I have really spicy sauce. Sometimes like when I talk, I forget to drink water and like I don't
Gotta follow up on that.
Yeah, what's the expired?
Gosh, are you kidding me?
Yes, sorry.
I know you.
Aww. High five.
Yeah, love. Just I did. No. Question mark. Do you need me to resend it? Or she's closing tomorrow. I'm like, I never finished y'all. Can you resend it? I'm like, yes. She goes, do we have a TA on it? That was like a month ago, and you approved it. Would you like to resend it to you? Sometimes it's just crazy. And I know we don't want everything's crazy. Did Jake give you back your altar? I'll flip it. All right, I think we can pack up and head to Alyssa. Just gonna watch you. I have a 3 o'clock conference call, but I really do. It's have a good day at work. It's a conference call.
So are you gonna come to work with Mom?
It's amazing though, because it's Friday. Do you guys get pizza on Fridays? Then what do you do Friday nights? What do you do Friday nights? So you gonna go pack up your stuff?
It's so nice meeting you.
Probably don't know what time.
It's our house on
Credit. Or get credit. It's like, okay, if you don't wanna go out and buy. Figure out like maybe a credit so that I can.
Did you write down any questions that you want to go over?
You know,
Did I?
my buyers.
I don't think so. I'm sure I'll come up with something
Okay.
in the next 20 minutes.
I really didn't plan.
That's fine.
Although we didn't get to go over the back-to-back closing thing.
Yeah.
So definitely let's talk about that. But
I'm sure I'll figure something.
I'm sure you will.
I love when you're
That's fine. Those are always such great questions.
I mean, the thing is like, you've taught us everything so well. I'm actually like running out of questions. I don't have you just
really like.
let me just turn my computer on and see if I have something. Because honestly, like everything is so like straightforward, the way you explain it, I actually get it. So
That's the
so
that's the way it's supposed to be.
So if I'm not having like a lot of questions, it's because like I actually just
Got it figured it out. Are you gonna go to Kat's class tomorrow with Ignite?
Bye.
She has a contract class tomorrow too.
Oh yeah, I don't miss a thing. I want to choose done with it tonight. And
Except he has me teaching a contract class next Friday, which I don't understand, so I have to ask.
I'm coming to all your classes. I'll be there.
We go. Hey, how are you? Good. Just wanted to check back with you. Okay. I still don't have the contract for your new, I keep checking on .loop, but all it is the buyer side stuff. So I don't. Okay, thank you. All right, okay, bye. Ask me questions about the contract. You guys need to give me the contract. Like, you gotta give it to me before I can answer any questions for you.
It's almost Friday. People are just.
Well, that's the thing. He's had it since like, I got a copy of the escrow receipt on Monday. And I'm like, I don't even know when you went under contract. I don't have this. But then I asked his wife, because he usually doesn't send me anything. And she's like, oh, I'll have to check on it. So then Wednesday, I checked with her. She's like, okay, Tim's supposed to send you everything. Well, here it is Thursday. So I'm like, okay, well, now we're about a week into this.
Oh my God.
What the contract is. So he's like, oh, I'm sending it to you right now. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Well, bye.
Good Lauren.
The only thing for me is like whenever we have time, because I feel like every week you bring up such good topics that, you know, obviously like I could never like think of because I don't know this, but whenever we have time, if we could just like go over the exclusive right of sale listing agreement, just so we can have it fresh in our heads, because you know, like I think I might have like a listing appointment coming up probably like in the next couple of weeks, so I just wanna be on point with it whenever you have time.
Well, we could do that today
It
too.
doesn't have to be like
Well,
whenever.
we'll see if anybody has any questions, and if not, then we'll go ahead and we'll
Because
do that.
I feel like the back-to-back buyer thing, that's really interesting because I didn't even know that existed, so like I said, whenever we have time, no rush.
Okay, yeah.
Alright, I'll see you in a few then.
Okay.
You're Joy, right?
Yes.
I'm Sophie.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
I've heard amazing things about you.
You have?
I have.
Oh my goodness, we don't have to pay.
No, when they come for free, take it, take it.
I'm like, all right, whatever they said, yes. Go with it.
I love that.
What are you taking in office? Come on. Shopping? Stop vacationing?
Fine, I'll take care.
Nice to meet you.
Right, you too, be nice to me.
Oh, yeah, most of the time, yeah. Yep, one of these offices.